She didn't know I owned the house. I secretly sold it for $940,000. When they started evicting her, she called me in a panic. My response stunned her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. The morning it happened, I was folding laundry in what used to be my bedroom. Mia had redecorated it 6 months earlier. Pale grey walls, minimalist furniture, those awful geometric prints that cost more than my first car. She called it updating the space. I called it erasing me. Mom. Her voice cut through the house like a blade. We need to talk, now. I found her in the kitchen, arms crossed, lips pressed into that thin line she'd perfected in her teens. Her husband Gabe stood behind her, scrolling through his phone with studied disinterest. He wore a polo shirt that probably cost $200 and looked like it came from a discount rack. Sit down, Mia said. I stayed standing. I'm listening. She sighed, the way you'd sigh at a stubborn child. This isn't working anymore. You living here, it's complicated. Complicated how? Don't make this harder than it needs to be. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen. We've been more than generous. Free housing, utilities included. But Gabe and I need our space. We're building something here. Building what, exactly? Gabe finally looked up. A life, Scarlett. Maybe you remember what that's like. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Just a crystalline clarity I hadn't felt in months. So, what are you saying? Mia's voice softened, which somehow made it worse. We think it's time you started contributing. Rent, $1,500 a month. Or, she paused, manufactured sympathy flooding her face. Or maybe you'd be happier somewhere else. Somewhere more appropriate for someone your age. The kitchen was silent except for the refrigerator's hum. Through the window, I could see the oak tree I'd planted when Derek was born. 35 years ago, in my yard, in my house. $1,500 a month, I repeated. It's below market rate, Gabe added helpfully. We're doing you a favor. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Designer jeans, fresh manicure, that smug certainty that she'd won something. Behind her, the granite countertops I'd saved for 3 years to install. The custom cabinets I'd chosen board by board. When do you need an answer? Today would be great, Mia smiled. We've already got plans for this space. Nothing personal, Mom. It's just business. I nodded slowly. I'll need to make some calls. Take your time, Gabe said, already back on his phone. We've got a showing at 3. I walked to my room, their guest room now, apparently, and closed the door. My hands were steady as I pulled out my cell phone. The number I needed was already in my favorites. Linda answered on the second ring. Scarlett, everything okay? Remember what we discussed last month? A pause. You're ready? I'm ready. Give me 2 hours, Linda said. Don't pack anything obvious. Act normal. I sat on the bed I'd shared with my husband for 26 years before cancer took him, and felt something like peace settle over me. They thought they'd backed me into a corner. They had no idea I'd been planning the exit for months. That night, I packed a single suitcase. Small things, mostly. Photos, my mother's jewelry, the deed to the house, tucked safely in a folder marked Tax Documents 2019. I left before dawn. No note, no explanation. Just gone. The journal entry I wrote in my new apartment was short. You just evicted the wrong woman. The house had been mine for 32 years. Every nail, every board, every penny of the mortgage that I'd scraped together while teaching 5th graders their multiplication tables and praying the car wouldn't break down before payday. That house wasn't just property. It was proof I'd survived. I bought it in 1993 with money I'd saved from teaching, back when you could still get a 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood without selling your soul to a bank. Tom contributed to the mortgage after we married, but my name was on the deed, always had been. That mattered to me in ways I couldn't quite articulate back then. Looking back now, I think some part of me always knew I'd need that protection. The neighborhood was perfect. Tree-lined streets, good schools, neighbors who actually talked to each other. I painted every room myself that first year, stripped wallpaper until my fingers bled, refinished the hardwood floors on my hands and knees because I couldn't afford to hire someone. Tom used to joke that I loved that house more than I loved him. I'd laugh and tell him he was ridiculous, but there was a kernel of truth there. The house was mine, in a way nothing else had ever been. This house was freedom. We raised 2 kids in those walls. Derek's first steps happened in the living room, right by the fireplace. Mia learned to ride a bike in the driveway, me running behind her, with my hands out, ready to catch her if she fell. We had birthday parties and Christmas mornings and Sunday dinners that stretched into evening. The house absorbed all of it, held all those memories in its walls like photographs. When Tom got sick, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, aggressive, the kind where doctors stop making eye contact and start talking about quality of life, we talked about the future. His future was measured in months. Mine stretched out like an empty highway with no exits in sight. The kids, he'd said one night, morphine making his words soft and slurred. Make sure they're taken care of. I'd made a promise. Of course I had. What else can you possibly say to a man in his final moments? What I didn't promise was to be a fool. Tom passed in March. Spring was coming, flowers pushing up through the dirt like they didn't know the world had ended. I went through the motions, funeral arrangements, thank you cards, sorting through his clothes and trying not to collapse every time I caught a whiff of his cologne on an old jacket. Derek came by every few days, awkward and earnest, in his pressed shirts and careful questions. You okay, Mom? Need anything? Mia called more than she visited, her voice bright and busy. Just checking in. Let me know if you need help with anything. 6 months after the funeral, Mia showed up with papers and that concerned expression she'd practiced in the mirror. Derek was with her, quiet and uncomfortable in his bank manager's suit. They sat at my kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals, and looked at me like I was a problem they needed to solve. Mum, we need to talk about estate planning. I poured coffee, set out cream and sugar. What about it? Mia spread papers across the table, official-looking documents with lots of small print. It's about the house. If something happened to you, God forbid, the estate taxes would be brutal. We're talking potentially hundreds of thousands. I hadn't really thought about it. That's why we're here. She smiled, squeezed my hand. We want to protect your investment, protect what Dad built. Derek cleared his throat. There's a strategy we use at the bank, family trusts. You'd transfer the house to a trust now, and it protects it from estate taxes later. Plus, it simplifies everything when, well, eventually. You'd still live here, Mia added quickly. Nothing changes day to day. You'd still have full use of the house. We'd just be the trustees, handling the legal side, making sure everything's protected. I looked at the papers, lines for signatures, notary stamps, legal language that might as well have been written in Sanskrit. What exactly would this trust do? It holds the property, Derek explained. Mia and I would be co-trustees, which means we'd handle any legal issues, property taxes, maintenance decisions. But you'd still live here as long as you want. It's just paperwork, protection. I picked up a pen, looked at my children. You're sure this is the right thing? Absolutely, Mia said. I deal with estates all the time in real estate. This is standard practice, smart practice. So I signed. Most of the papers, anyway. What they didn't know, what Derek's banking expertise and Mia's realtor license had somehow missed, was that I'd filed an LLC 3 years earlier. Rowan Properties, named after Tom's mother. Linda had handled it quietly, during one of our Tuesday lunch dates. We'd been talking about retirement planning, and she'd mentioned asset protection strategies. Just in case, she'd said, you never know what life throws at you. Prophetic words. The house transferred to the trust, sure. But the trust was controlled by the LLC, and the LLC was controlled by me. Sole member, sole manager, absolute authority. The papers Mia had me sign gave her and Derek power of attorney for property management decisions. Not ownership, not sale rights, just the ability to handle repairs and maintenance on behalf of the trust. Mia read it as ownership. I let her. For 2 years, I watched the transformation. She started small, new curtains in the living room. Just freshening things up, Mum. Then came the paint, the furniture, the complete overhaul of the master bedroom that erased every trace of the life Tom and I had built there. She brought clients through. Investment property tours, she called them. She'd parade strangers through my home, pointing out the potential and the bones and how the neighborhood was really up and coming. I'd smile and offer them coffee and pretend I didn't notice how she talked about the place like it was already hers. Gabe appeared a year after Tom's funeral, handsome in that practiced way, all white teeth and firm handshakes. He called himself an entrepreneur, which seemed to mean he had a lot of lunches and no actual job. Mia was smitten. They married 6 months later in a destination wedding that cost more than my first car. He moved in gradually. First, it was a few nights a week, then a dresser in the closet. Then his name started appearing on the household accounts Mia had insisted on setting up. Just to make things easier, Mum. I played the part, grateful widow, aging mother, woman who didn't understand legal paperwork or modern finance. I asked simple questions and accepted simple answers. I made dinner and did laundry and pretended not to notice when they had whispered conversations that stopped the moment I entered a room. The house shifted around me. My furniture disappeared piece by piece, replaced with Mia's aesthetic. Photos of Tom came down. My books got boxed up and moved to the garage. We need the space, Mia explained. And honestly, Mum, some of this stuff is just dated. I watched it happen, catalogued every change, every erasure, every small theft disguised as improvement. Then the demand started. First, it was contributing to utilities. $100 a month seemed reasonable, Mia said. Electric bills were high. I paid. Then it was helping with the mortgage, a mortgage that didn't exist because I'd paid off the house in 2015. But I didn't mention that, I just wrote the check. Finally, rent, $1,500 a month. Market rate, Gabe called it. Below market, actually. They were doing me a favor. That's when I called Linda. I want to sell, I told her. She was having lunch at her desk. I could hear papers rustling. Your house? Their house, technically. Let's see what they do with that. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, sharp and delighted. You're absolutely sure? I've never been more sure of anything. I'll need a week to set it up properly. Clean sale, legitimate buyer, everything by the book. When this falls apart, we can't have any loose threads. Make it airtight, I said. When this falls apart, I want them to know exactly how it happened. No confusion, no excuses. She did. God, did she ever. The buyer was a corporation, Clearwater Holdings, registered in Delaware. The price was fair market value, maybe even a little low to move it fast. $940,000. The escrow closed quietly, efficiently. Mia and Gabe didn't even know the house was on the market. Why would they? They thought it was theirs. The morning after they demanded I pay rent or leave, the courier arrived with the documents. Legal, official, irrefutable. Notice of property transfer. Notice of new ownership. Notice that their entire reality was about to collapse. I wasn't there to see it. But Linda described it to me later, getting details from Clara Henderson, my neighbor who missed nothing and loved sharing everything. Mia had been in the kitchen with Gabe and 2 of his investment partners. guys who wore too much cologne and treated every conversation like a negotiation. They were discussing something, voices low and serious, planning their next move, probably, figuring out how to leverage the house for whatever scheme Gabe had cooked up. The courier knocked. Mia signed for the envelope, barely glancing at it. Probably thought it was another delivery for Gabe, some gadget or sample from one of his business ventures. Then she opened it. Clara said you could hear her from 3 houses down. The party was Gabe's idea, naturally. According to Clara, who heard it from the caterer, who heard it from Mia's assistant, he called it a portfolio celebration. 8 people gathered in my former dining room 3 days after they received the property transfer notice, drinking wine that cost more per bottle than I used to spend on groceries in a month. Mia wore white. Of course she did. A designer dress that probably cost what I used to make in a week teaching. Her hair was perfect, makeup flawless, smile bright and brittle as glass, playing the role of gracious hostess in the house she thought she owned. The guest list was pure Gabe. His mother, Patricia, a woman who'd never liked me and never bothered to hide it. 2 real estate agents from Mia's firm, the kind who measured success in Instagram followers. A banker whose name I'd heard a dozen times but never bothered to remember. 3 of Gabe's business associates, men who called themselves entrepreneurs but couldn't explain what they actually did. I wasn't invited, obviously. I was living in a small apartment across town by then, a 1-bedroom with thin walls and a view of a parking lot. It was temporary. Everything was temporary now, but it served its purpose. I sent flowers anyway. White lilies, expensive arrangement from the best florist in town. The card read, "Congratulations on your new beginning," in careful script. The return address was a P.O. box in the next county. The flowers arrived at 6:30, right as the appetizers came out. Clara watched the delivery from her porch, pretending to water plants she'd already watered twice that day. Mia put the flowers on the mantel. "How thoughtful," she said to no one in particular. Didn't even look at the card closely. Just another gift from someone impressed by her success. The food was catered. Small plates, the kind where everything's artfully arranged. Past hors d'oeuvres. A table with cheese and crackers that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill used to run. Gabe held court in the living room, gesturing with his wine glass, explaining his latest venture. Something about cryptocurrency and real estate synergy. Blockchain solutions for traditional property markets. The kind of pitch that sounded impressive if you didn't listen too closely. His mother, Patricia, sat on my old couch, their new couch, technically, nodding along like he was explaining the theory of relativity. "So brilliant," she murmured, "just like your father." Gabe's father had been a used car salesman who'd abandoned the family when Gabe was 12. But Patricia had rewritten that history long ago. The real estate agents were on their phones, probably posting pictures. Blessed Asher dream home, Asher's success. Mia joined them, angling for the best light, making sure the flowers were visible in the background. "This space," one of them said, "the energy is just incredible." "We've put a lot of work into it," Mia said, meaning she'd erased everything I'd built and called it improvement. The banker, Phillips, was more interested in the numbers. He pulled Gabe aside, voice low. "So the property assessment came in at what?" $940, Gabe said. "Maybe a touch low, but we're not looking to sell. This is a long-term hold, generational wealth building." Phillips nodded appreciatively. "Smart. Real estate's always solid. And with your equity position..." I would have paid money to see his face when he found out the truth. Dinner was served at 7:30, grilled salmon with asparagus, some kind of quinoa situation, wine that Gabe made a show of decanting, explaining the vintage and the region, like he'd studied wine instead of just reading the label. The conversation flowed around the table: real estate markets, investment strategies, someone's vacation in Tuscany, Gabe's mother telling stories about his childhood that bore no resemblance to reality. everyone performing their role perfectly. Mia was in her element. This was what she'd wanted, what she'd been building toward. The successful daughter, the perfect home, the influential friends. Never mind that it was built on a lie. Around 8 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Clara, watching from her window across the street, said the whole table went quiet. Mia looked at Gabe. Gabe looked at his watch. No one else was expected. Mia went to answer it. Then Mia screamed, not loud, not theatrical. Just this sharp, sudden sound that cut through the dinner party ambiance like a knife through silk. Everyone froze. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Wine glasses paused mid-sip. Gabe was up and moving before anyone else reacted. He found Mia in the entryway, staring at a manila envelope like it was a live grenade. The courier was already gone, disappeared back into his truck. "What is it?" Gabe grabbed the envelope, pulled out the papers. I wish I could have seen his face. His color apparently went from healthy tan to bone white in about 3 seconds. His hand started shaking. "This is wrong," he said. "This has to be wrong." Patricia appeared in the hallway. "What's going on?" "Someone's trying to say the house was sold." Gabe's voice was climbing. "Some corporation. Clearwater Holdings. It's obviously a mistake." But Mia had pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. She was good at her job, I'll give her that. She knew how to check these things. County records, property transfers. All of it was online now, public record for anyone who knew where to look. Her face told the story before her words did. "It's real," she whispered. "The transfer's been recorded 30 days ago. How did we not see this?" "Because it's fraud." Gabe's voice was loud enough now that the dinner guests were filing into the hallway. "Someone forged documents. Identity theft. We'll sue. We'll—" "Gabe." Mia's voice was flat. "Check the seller information." He looked. Took him a moment to process it. "Rowan Properties, LLC. Who the hell is Rowan Properties?" "It's Mum's company." Mia's hand was pressed to her mouth. "She set it up years ago, before Dad passed. I remember seeing the paperwork. So she owned the house. Not us. We were just managing it." The silence in that hallway must have been exquisite. All those successful people, all that wealth and influence and confidence, suddenly faced with the reality that they'd been played by a 58-year-old retired schoolteacher. Phillips, the banker, cleared his throat. "I don't understand. You said you owned this property outright." "We do," Gabe said, but his voice was uncertain now. "Did you?" Patricia's voice was sharp. "Or did you assume?" Mia was scrolling through her phone, pulling up documents. "The trust. We set up a trust. She signed everything over." "To a trust," one of the real estate agents said slowly. "Not to you personally." "Same thing." "Actually, it's not." This from Phillips. If the trust was controlled by her LLC, and she was the sole member of the LLC, then she had authority to sell the trust's assets. "That's not," Gabe started. "That's exactly how it works," Phillips said. His face had gone carefully neutral. The face of a banker who just realized he'd been having dinner with either fools or liars. The real estate agents were already edging toward the door. Networking was one thing. Being associated with a legal disaster was something else entirely. "There has to be a mistake," Mia said. "We've been paying the mortgage. We've been maintaining the property." "What mortgage?" Patricia asked. "You said it was paid off." Mia's face went blank. She'd been caught. She'd told different stories to different people, and now they were all in the same room comparing notes. The evening collapsed after that. People made excuses. The caterers packed up quietly. Patricia left without saying goodbye, her face tight with fury. The real estate agents disappeared like smoke. By 9:30, it was just Mia and Gabe in the house that wasn't theirs anymore, surrounded by the remnants of their celebration. Clara said the light stayed on until past midnight. She could hear raised voices through the windows. Not the words, just the tone. Accusation, defense, Panic. The next morning, a second letter arrived. This one was from an attorney. Eviction notice. 30 days to vacate the premises. Standard procedure. Nothing personal. Just business. Mia called Derek. Called him crying, begging him to make sense of this. Derek, who'd always been conflict-averse, suddenly found himself forced to pick a side. He didn't call me, not yet, but I knew he would eventually, and when he did, I'd be ready. I rented the apartment 3 weeks before the confrontation with Mia. It wasn't much, 600 square feet, second floor, a building that had seen better decades. The carpet was beige and worn thin. The kitchen was barely big enough for one person. The bathroom tiles were original to the building, but it had two things I needed. It was cheap, and it was mine. Nobody could demand rent. Nobody could redecorate around me. Nobody could erase me piece by piece and call it improvement. Linda helped me move in. She arrived with her SUV and a practical attitude, hauling boxes without complaint. We worked in comfortable silence. "You sure about this?" she asked at one point. "Which part? The apartment or the revenge?" "Both. Either." She sat on the floor. "This is going to get ugly, Scarlett." "It's already ugly. I'm just making it visible." She nodded slowly. "Fair enough. You want coffee?" We sat on the floor of my empty apartment and drank coffee from paper cups, and I told her the rest of the plan. Not just the sale. That was done, documented, irreversible, but everything that would come after. "Gabe's the weak point," I said. "He's been using the house as collateral. I've seen the documents. He's got loan applications pending with 3 different banks, all listing his primary residence as an asset. When they find out he doesn't own it, never owned it." "Securities fraud," Linda said. "Among other things. And Mia's been claiming the property on her real estate portfolio, using it as proof of her investment expertise. When her colleagues find out..." "Career limiting," Linda smiled. "You've really thought this through. I've had time, 2 years of watching them play house with my life." I took another sip of coffee. "Derek's going to be hurt. Derek's a grown man. He made his choices. He just went along with Mia. He's not malicious, just..." "Weak," Linda said. "Not cruelly, just stating a fact. And weakness can hurt people just as much as malice." I knew she was right. Derek had stood by and let Mia steamroll me. He'd brought the paperwork, explained the trust, made it all sound reasonable. He'd taken the path of least resistance, and that path had led straight over me. The next few days passed in a strange calm. I unpacked boxes, arranged furniture, tried to make the apartment feel like something other than a temporary shelter. Clara called twice, breathless with updates. "Everyone's talking about it," Clara said. "The whole neighborhood. Can you imagine? Finding out your house was sold out from under you." "Terrible," I murmured. After I hung up, I made tea and sat by the window. The view was nothing special. Parking lot, dumpster, a corner of the street. But it was mine. My phone rang again. Derek this time. I let it go to voicemail. Listened to his message 3 times. His voice was strained, careful. "Mom, I don't know what's going on, but Mia's really upset. Can you call me? Please? We need to talk about this." I deleted the message. 2 days later, Linda called. "They're filing a complaint. Mia and Gabe, claiming fraud, elder abuse, undue influence, the whole 9 yards. Expected. You okay?" "I'm fine." "Scarlett." Her voice was gentle. "Are you really fine?" I looked around the apartment, small, shabby, mine. "Yeah, I really am." "Good, because this is about to get worse before it gets better. They've hired a lawyer, Franklin Jessup. He's expensive and he's aggressive." "Let him be aggressive. He's got no case." Linda was quiet for a moment. "You know what I like about you, Scarlett? You don't bluff. Most people say they're ready for a fight, but when it actually gets ugly, they fold. Not you. I spent 30 years teaching middle school. I've seen ugly." She laughed. "Fair point. Listen, I've got someone I want you to meet. old colleague of mine, used to work in the DA's office before she went into private practice. She's good, she's mean, and she owes me a favor. I don't need a lawyer. Yes, you do. Not to defend yourself, you're clean, but to go on offense. Gabe's been playing fast and loose with loan applications. If we can prove he's been lying to lenders, that's bank fraud. Exactly. And bank fraud is federal. I felt something unfold in my chest. Not quite satisfaction. Not yet. But the promise of it. Set up the meeting. Already did. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., her office downtown. I showed up at exactly 10 a.m., wearing a navy dress and pearl earrings. The lawyer's office was in one of the older buildings downtown, the kind with high ceilings and crown molding. Her name was Rachel Torres. 50s, sharp suit, handshake like a vice. She looked at me with the kind of assessment that probably made witnesses squirm on the stand. Linda says you're being railroaded by your kids. My daughter and her husband. My son's just along for the ride. Tell me everything. So I did. The whole story, start to finish. The trust, the LLC, the sale, the eviction. I showed her documents, timelines, recordings I'd made of conversations with Mia about their property. Rachel listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and smiled. You're either the smartest woman I've met this year, or you're playing a very long game. Why not both? Why not both, she agreed. Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to respond to their complaint with a countersuit. Defamation, harassment, emotional distress. We won't win it, but it'll tie them up and cost them legal fees. Second, we're going to file complaints with every bank Gabe's applied to, along with evidence that he's been misrepresenting his assets. That starts the fraud investigation ball rolling. Third, we're going to notify the State Real Estate Board about Mia's portfolio misrepresentations. Will that work? It'll hurt, a lot, but the real damage comes from the social fallout. She leaned forward. Here's what people don't understand about revenge. It's not about the legal system. Real revenge happens in reputation, in relationships, in watching someone's carefully constructed life fall apart piece by piece while everyone they know watches. You've thought about this. I used to prosecute white-collar crime. You know what hurt those defendants more than jail time? More than fines? Watching their friends turn away. Watching people cross the street to avoid talking to them. So what do? We make sure everyone knows. We document everything. We make it public, we make it visible, and we let social consequences do the heavy lifting. She pulled out a legal pad. Let's start with who needs to know what. We spent 2 hours planning. It felt like teaching again, breaking down a complex problem into manageable steps, creating a curriculum of destruction. By the time I left, I had a folder full of documents and a timeline that would keep Mia and Gabe busy for months. Walking back to my car, I passed a coffee shop where I used to meet Derek for breakfast sometimes, before, when he was still my son instead of just Mia's brother. My phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. We need to talk, this is getting out of hand. Derek, I typed back. I agree, it got out of hand when your sister demanded rent for my own house. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, please. I put the phone away. Not yet. Derek would have to wait. He'd spent 2 years avoiding conflict, taking the easy path. Now he wanted to talk. Now he wanted to mediate. Some things couldn't be mediated. Some things just had to burn. The first crack appeared on a Wednesday morning, 2 weeks after the eviction notice. Gabe's mother, Patricia, showed up at my apartment unannounced. Someone must have let her in, or she'd waited until another tenant was coming through. I opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, dressed like she was going to a funeral. Black dress, black heels, black handbag clutched in both hands. Her face was carefully composed, but I could see the rage underneath. Scarlett, we need to talk. Good morning, Patricia. Would you like to come in? She swept past me without waiting, stood in the middle of my small living room, taking in the second-hand furniture and the boxes I still hadn't unpacked. Her lip curled slightly. This was what I'd been reduced to, her expression said. Coffee? I offered. I'm not here for pleasantries. She turned to face me. What you're doing to my son is unconscionable. What am I doing to your son? You know exactly what. This house situation. Mia says you're claiming you owned it all along. That's manipulation. I sat down on my couch, didn't offer her a seat. Patricia, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Did Gabe ever show you the deed to that house? He didn't need to. Mia inherited it. Inherited from whom? My husband Tom passed away 7 years ago, and I'm still very much alive. She waved a hand dismissively. The trust, the transfer. Whatever legal gymnastics you performed, you gave them that house. I gave them management authority, not ownership. There's a difference. Semantics. Law, I corrected, which your son should have understood before he started using my property as collateral for loans. Her face went very still. What are you talking about? You didn't know? I pulled out my phone, opened the folder Rachel had prepared. Your son has been listing that house as an asset on loan applications. 3 different banks, Patricia. $500,000 in pending loans, all secured against a property he doesn't own. That's not possible. I handed her the phone. Watched her face as she scrolled through the documents. Bank applications, property valuations, loan agreements, all with Gabe's signature. He told me they owned it, she said finally. Her voice was quieter now. He told everyone they owned it, including the banks. That's fraud, Patricia. Federal fraud. She sat down heavily on the arm of my couch, suddenly looked her age. What do you want? I want them out of my house. I want them to stop lying about me. And I want them to face the consequences of their choices. Gabe made a mistake. Gabe made several mistakes, deliberately, with your daughter-in-law's full participation. I took my phone back. I'm not the villain here. I'm just the woman who stopped letting them steal from me. They're going to lose everything. Yes. Patricia stood up, smoothed her dress. You were always cold, Scarlett. Tom used to say so. Under all that pleasantness, you were ice. Tom appreciated that about me. It's why we lasted 26 years. She left without another word. I watched from my window as she got into her Mercedes, sat there for a long minute before starting the engine. I wondered what she was thinking, if she was finally adding up all the small inconsistencies in Gabe's stories. 2 days later, the bank started calling. Rachel had been efficient. She'd filed complaints with all 3 institutions, along with documentation proving the property had been sold. The loans Gabe had pending, $500,000 combined, were immediately frozen pending investigation. Clara called me that evening, practically vibrating with excitement. You won't believe what I just heard. Gabe's car got repossessed this afternoon, right out of the driveway. Mia was screaming at the tow truck driver. That's unfortunate. There's more. Jenny from the real estate office says Mia's been put on administrative leave. Something about ethics violations. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. After I hung up, I made dinner. Simple pasta, the kind I used to make when the kids were little, and money was tight. I ate at my small table, looking out at the parking lot, and felt something like satisfaction settle in my chest. Derek called that night. I answered this time. Mum. His voice was strained. We really need to talk. So, talk. Not on the phone. Can we meet, please? I considered. Tomorrow, the diner on 5th Street, noon. Thank you. Mum, thank you. The diner was one of those places that hadn't changed in 40 years. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor, laminated menus with too many options. Derek was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking more rumpled than I'd ever seen him. His tie was loose, his shirt wrinkled. His carefully maintained banker appearance had cracked. I slid into the booth across from him. A waitress appeared, poured coffee without asking. "You look tired," I said. "I haven't been sleeping well." He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. "Mom, what's happening? Mia says you sold the house without telling anyone. Gabe says you're trying to destroy them. The lawyers are saying things about fraud and criminal charges. What do you think is happening?" "I don't know. That's why I'm asking." He looked at me, and for a moment I saw the little boy he'd been. "Did you really own the house this whole time?" "Yes. But the trust..." "The trust was controlled by my LLC, which I never gave up control of. The papers you brought me 2 years ago gave me a management authority, not ownership." His face crumpled. "I didn't know. I swear, Mom, I thought we were protecting the house. Mia said it was standard estate planning." "Did you read the documents?" I skimmed them. Mia's the real estate expert. I trusted her analysis." "You trusted her, and she lied to you." "She's my sister, and I'm your mother." I kept my voice level. "For 2 years, Derek, you watched her erase me from that house. You watched her demand rent. You watched her treat me like a tenant in my own home. And you said nothing. I didn't want to cause problems. So you let her cause them instead." The waitress brought our food, burger and fries for Derek, soup for me. We ate in silence for a few minutes. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I should have paid more attention. Should have stood up for you." "Yes, you should have." "Can you fix this? Is there a way to make this right?" I looked at him. My son, my careful, conflict-avoiding, passive son. "What do you want me to fix?" "The house situation, the legal problems, Mia's losing her license, Gabe's got the banks after him. Their marriage is falling apart. Can't we just reset somehow?" "Reset to what? To them living in my house and charging me rent?" "No, of course not. But maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a middle ground." "There isn't." I pushed my soup away. "Derek, they didn't make a mistake. They made choices, deliberate, calculated choices. They chose to push me out. They chose to lie about ownership. Gabe chose to commit fraud, and you chose to look the other way. So what happens now? Now they face consequences. The house sells to its new owner. They move out. Gabe answers to the banks and probably the federal authorities. Mia deals with her licensing board, and life goes on. And us? You and me?" I stood up, pulled out cash for my meal. "That's up to you. You can keep trying to make peace between me and your sister. Keep taking the path of least resistance. Or you can decide what kind of son you want to be." "That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But fair stopped mattering 2 years ago." I left him sitting in the booth, staring at his half-eaten burger. The messages were desperate. The first one was anger. How could I do this to her? Didn't I care about family? The second was different, quieter, scared. "Mum, please, we need to talk. I know you're angry, but this is getting out of control. Gabe's... Things are really bad right now. Please call me back." I saved both messages. Rachel had told me to document everything. The official eviction date was 30 days from the notice. Standard procedure, all legal and proper. But Mia and Gabe didn't wait that long to start unraveling. According to Clara, the fight started getting louder around day 10. Screaming matches at 2 in the morning. Doors slamming. Once, a lamp went through a window. The police came twice for noise complaints. "That nice Officer Reyes," Clara told me over the phone. "He said they were both hysterical, blaming each other for everything. Gabe actually accused Mia of knowing the house wasn't theirs all along." On day 15, Gabe's business associates showed up, 3 men in cheap suits. They parked in the driveway, went inside, came out 20 minutes later, carrying boxes. Clara watched from her porch. "Taking their equipment," she reported. "Computers, printers, some kind of camera set up. Gabe tried to stop them, but one of them said something about investors who want their money back, and that shut him right up." On day 18, Patricia showed up again. This time she called first. "I need to speak with you, face to face." There's a coffee shop on Maple Street. Do you know it? She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table in the back. She'd aged since our last meeting. New lines around her eyes, grey showing at her roots. "Thank you for coming," Patricia said stiffly. "You said it was important." "I've been going through Gabe's papers." She pulled out a folder. "Financial documents, loan applications, business plans. I've been trying to understand what he's gotten himself into." And it's worse than I thought. She opened the folder, showed me spreadsheets covered in red ink. He owes money everywhere. Credit cards maxed out. Personal loans from people I've never heard of. And the business, these cryptocurrency ventures, they're vapor. Nothing real. Just promises and presentations. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I need to know how much of it is your fault." I looked up at her. "Excuse me? If you'd just talk to them, explain the situation with the house. Instead, you sold it out from under them and destroyed their financial foundation. So how much of this debt is because of what you did?" I stood up. "I'm leaving." "Sit down." Her voice was sharp. "Please." I sat, not because she asked, but because I wanted to hear where this was going. Patricia closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were wet. "I can't help him. I've already given him $60,000 in the last year. Money I don't have. Money I took out of my retirement, and it's gone, all of it. He says he'll pay me back when his next deal comes through, but there's never a next deal. There's just more debt. He's your son. He's a liar." The words seemed to hurt her. I've been defending him his whole life, making excuses, blaming his father for leaving, blaming the economy, blaming bad luck. But it's not bad luck, is it? It's choices. Bad choices. I sipped my tea. Waited. "Mia called me yesterday," Patricia continued. "She's leaving him, taking what's left of their savings and moving to her friend's place in Oregon. She's abandoning the whole thing, the eviction, the investigations, Gabe, just running." "Smart. Is it, or is it cowardly?" "Sometimes they're the same thing." I leaned forward. "Patricia, what do you want from me?" "I don't know." She laughed, a broken sound. "I came here thinking I'd convince you to drop everything. Save them somehow. But listening to myself talk, maybe they can't be saved." "No," I agreed. "Maybe they can't." "Do you feel guilty at all?" I considered the question. Really considered it. "No, I feel like I finally stopped being a victim. Even if it destroys them. They were destroying me, slowly, politely, but still destroying me." I finished my tea. "I'm sorry about your money, Patricia, truly. But that's between you and Gabe." She nodded slowly. "I suppose it is." That evening, Linda called. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Gabe's disappeared, left 3 days ago, didn't tell Mia where he was going. She thinks he might have left the state. And that's our problem because the federal investigation is about to move forward, and if he's fled, it complicates things." I thought about the men in cheap suits, the boxes they'd carried out. "He's not coming back." "Probably not, which means Mia's going to face everything alone." "Good." Linda was quiet for a moment. "You're really committed to this?" "I really am." "Okay, then let's talk about the conference. A mediation session technically, but really it's a chance to lay everything out in front of witnesses. The real estate board, the banks, some of Mia's colleagues. When? Next week. Are you ready for that?" I looked around my small apartment. "I'm ready." The conference room was in a downtown office building, 20th floor, windows overlooking the city. Neutral territory. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a grey suit Linda had helped me pick out. Professional. Serious. Rachel was already there, setting up her laptop and documents. "How are you feeling?" "Surprisingly calm." "Good. Remember, you're not here to defend yourself. You're here to present facts. Let the facts do the work." The room filled slowly. 2 representatives from the state real estate board. A man from First National Bank. Phillips, the banker from the dinner party, looking uncomfortable. Two of Mia's colleagues from the real estate firm. A lawyer I didn't recognize. And Clara. Mia arrived last, with Derek hovering behind her. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled, makeup unable to hide the dark circles. She saw me and froze. "Mum." "Mia." We took seats on opposite sides. The real estate board representative sat at the head, establishing authority. Helen Pritchard began. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to discuss the property transfer at 847 Oakmont Drive and the circumstances surrounding it. Ms. Wright, would you like to begin?" I nodded. Rachel handed me a folder. 2 years ago, I said, keeping my voice steady, my children convinced me to sign papers, transferring my house into a family trust. They told me it was for estate planning purposes, that nothing would change day to day, that I'd still live there as long as I wanted. I passed around copies of the trust documents. What they didn't tell me, what they either didn't know or chose not to share, was that the trust was controlled by an LLC I'd established years earlier. Rowan Properties. I remained the sole member and manager of that LLC throughout. Mia's lawyer leaned forward. "If you remained in control, why didn't you say something earlier?" "Because I wanted to see what they'd do with the illusion of ownership. And what they did was charge me rent in my own home, threaten me with eviction, and systematically erase my presence from the property." I pulled out recordings, transcripts of conversations, photos of the house showing the progressive removal of my belongings. Additionally, I continued, my son-in-law, Gabriel Berkeley, used the property as collateral for multiple loan applications, listing it as an asset he owned outright. This constitutes fraud. The bank representative was nodding, taking notes. Phillips wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. When I decided to sell the property, which I had every legal right to do, I did so through legitimate channels. Fair market value, clean title. One of the real estate board reps held up a hand. "Ms. Wright Berkeley, you've been using this property in your professional portfolio. Can you explain that?" Mia's voice was barely a whisper. "I thought it was ours." "You thought, or you were told?" Both. We set up the trust. Mum signed everything. I handled the paperwork." "Did you read the paperwork?" Silence. "Ms. Wright Berkeley, did you read the trust documents completely before filing them?" "I skimmed them. I'm a realtor, not a lawyer. I trusted that everything was standard." Helen Pritchard made a note. "And yet you listed this property as part of your investment portfolio. You brought clients through for tours. You used it as proof of your real estate acumen." "I didn't know I was doing anything wrong." "Ignorance isn't an excuse," the other board rep said, "especially not for a licensed real estate professional." Rachel leaned forward. "Ms. Wright Berkeley received rent payments from her mother for approximately 6 months. Rent on a property she didn't own, that had no actual mortgage, and that she had no legal authority to charge for." "I thought I was covering costs," Mia said desperately. "What costs? The house was paid off. Your mother has the documents proving final mortgage payment in 2015. So where did that rent money go?" Mia looked at Derek. Derek looked at the table. "It went into household accounts," Mia said finally. "Accounts Gabe and I shared. Accounts your husband then used to fund his business ventures. Business ventures that were, according to the documentation we've received, largely fraudulent." The bank representative cleared his throat. "For the record, Mr. Berkeley has 5 outstanding loan applications with 3 different institutions, totaling approximately $500,000. All list 847 Oakmont Drive as collateral. All contain his signature claiming ownership. We've frozen the applications and begun formal fraud investigations." "Where is Mr. Berkeley now?" Helen Pritchard asked. "We don't know," Mia's lawyer said. "He left the area approximately 1 week ago. We have no current contact information." The room went silent. Everyone processed what that meant. Derek finally spoke. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I really didn't know it would turn into this. I looked at him. My son. My well-meaning, weak-willed son. You didn't want to know, I said quietly. There's a difference. Clara from her seat in the corner raised a hand. Can I say something? Helen Pritchard looked surprised but nodded. Go ahead. I've lived next door to Scarlett for 15 years. I watched her paint that house, fix the roof, plant the garden. I was there when her husband passed. I saw Mia and Gabe move in, and I watched them slowly push Scarlett out, made her feel like a guest in her own home. So when people ask me if I think Scarlett did something wrong, I say no. I think she did something smart. She sat back down, looking pleased with herself. The conference continued for another hour. Documents were examined, questions were asked. Mia's colleagues looked increasingly uncomfortable. Phillips admitted he'd been at the celebration dinner and had been told directly that Mia and Gabe owned the property outright. By the end, Mia was crying quietly. Derek had his arm around her, but even he looked defeated. Helen Pritchard collected all the documents. The board will need time to review everything. Ms. Wright-Berkeley, I strongly suggest you retain counsel. This investigation will likely expand beyond just the property misrepresentation. Am I going to lose my license? That's not a determination I can make today, but I'll be honest with you. This is serious. You misrepresented property ownership to clients and colleagues. You accepted rent on a property you didn't own. Whether you intended fraud or simply failed in your due diligence, the consequences are significant. We filed out slowly. In the hallway, Mia grabbed my arm. Mom, please, isn't there some way to fix this? I looked at her hand on my arm. She let go. You wanted independence, Mia. You wanted to be free of your aging mother taking up space in your perfect life. Well, now you have it. Complete independence. Good luck. I walked away, Rachel beside me. Behind us, I could hear Mia sobbing, Derek trying to comfort her. In the elevator, Rachel smiled. That went well. Did it? She's finished professionally. The board's going to suspend her license at minimum, possibly revoke it entirely. Gabe's going to face federal charges, and you came out looking like the victim you actually were. The elevator doors opened. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm. There's one more thing, Rachel said. The new owners of your house want to meet with you. Why? They didn't say, but they specifically requested you, tomorrow, 10 a.m., at the property. I thought about it, about walking back into that house one more time. Yes, I can make it. The house looked different somehow. Same structure, same yard, same oak tree. But different, like walking past your childhood home years later and realizing it's smaller than you remembered. A silver sedan was parked in the driveway. Rental car, I guessed. I'd brought Linda with me. Moral support, she'd said, and legal witness in case this is some kind of trap. Rachel cleared it. Rachel's optimistic. I'm paranoid. We walked up the front steps. The porch swing I'd installed 20 years ago was gone, replaced with modern chairs. The door opened before I could knock. A man stood there, late 60s, well-dressed in casual clothes. Behind him, a woman about the same age, elegant and watchful. Mrs. Wright, the man said, I'm Harold Conway. This is my wife Margaret. Thank you for coming. Conway. The name was familiar. We shook hands. They invited us in. The interior had been emptied. All of Mia's furniture, her decorations, gone. The rooms echoed. We're having it remodeled, Margaret said. New floors, updated kitchen. It's a beautiful house. Good bones. Thank you, I picked it out myself. 32 years ago. Harold gestured to the empty living room. We sat on the floor, an oddly informal arrangement. I'll be direct, Harold said. We didn't buy this house by accident. Well, not entirely by accident. Your friend Linda reached out to our investment company about a property that was coming on the market. Clean title, motivated seller, fair price. We were interested for business reasons. But, I prompted, but when we learned the specifics, the situation with your daughter, the eviction, the whole mess, Margaret and I decided to make it personal. Margaret leaned forward. 20 years ago, I was a real estate agent in Riverside, just starting out, and then I made a mistake. A big one. I misrepresented a property's zoning to a client. Didn't mean to. I genuinely thought I had the right information. But I was wrong, and it cost my client a development deal. What happened? The client was understanding. He didn't sue, but someone else on that deal, another agent who wanted to make herself look better, she reported me to the state board. Made sure everyone knew about my mistake, embellished it, made it sound like intentional fraud. I lost my license for 2 years, lost my reputation forever. I'm sorry. The agent who reported me, Margaret continued, was named Mia Berkeley. Well, Mia Wright at the time. This was before she married. The room went very still. Harold smiled slightly. Small world, isn't it? When Linda mentioned who the property belonged to, Margaret remembered the name. We did some research, found out it was the same Mia, and we thought, well, maybe Karma needed a little help. I looked at them both. You bought my house to get revenge on Mia? We bought your house because it was a good investment, Harold corrected. The revenge part was just a bonus. Symmetry, maybe. She ruined Margaret's career over a genuine mistake. Now she's losing hers over deliberate misrepresentation. Seems fair. Linda was grinning. You didn't tell me this part. You didn't need to know, Harold said. We wanted the purchase to be completely clean. No appearance of conspiracy or targeted harassment. Just a straightforward business transaction. But now that it's done, Margaret said, we wanted you to know. Wanted you to understand that this house went to people who appreciate what you went through, who understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of Mia's casual cruelty. She destroyed your career, I said. She tried. I rebuilt it. Took years, but I did. Went back to school, got a law degree, specialized in real estate law. I've spent 20 years helping people navigate the exact kind of legal maze she trapped you in. Harold stood up, helped Margaret to her feet. We're having a small gathering here next month. Once the renovations are done. A housewarming. We'd like you to come. You and Linda. And Clara Henderson, if she's interested. Clara would walk across broken glass for an invitation. Then it settled. He walked us to the door. Mrs. Wright, I hope you find some peace in all this. What your daughter did to you was unforgivable, but you handled it brilliantly. After they left, Linda and I sat in her car outside the house. My house. Not my house. Someone else's house now. Did you know? I asked. About the Conways and Mia. Not until last week. Rachel found the connection while doing background on the buyers. I thought about telling you, but... She shrugged. Seemed like something you should hear from them. It's perfect. It really is. Mia loses everything to someone she wronged years ago. Someone she probably doesn't even remember. Do you think she'll find out? Eventually. Margaret's not hiding. Once Mia puts it together... Linda started the car. Well, that'll be entertaining. We drove back to my apartment in comfortable silence. Inside, I made tea and sat by the window. My phone was full of messages. Derek, mostly. A few from numbers I didn't recognize. One from Patricia. I'm selling my house, her message read. Moving to a smaller place. Gabe asked me for more money. I said no. He hasn't spoken to me since. I thought you should know. I typed back, I'm sorry. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. I'm not. You were right. He needed to face consequences. Thank you for that. I stared at the message for a long time. Patricia thanking me. Patricia, who'd blamed me, who'd tried to guilt me into backing down. She'd finally seen what I'd seen all along. The final eviction day fell on a Tuesday. Cold morning, clouds threatening rain. I didn't plan to go, but Clara called at 7 a.m. You have to come. You have to see this. So I went, parked 3 houses down where I could see, but not be obvious. The scene was chaos. A moving truck in the driveway, almost nothing going into it. Mia on the lawn, shouting into her phone. Derek carrying half-empty boxes. Mia's colleague loading her own car with items from the house. "They're fighting over who owns what," Clara said breathlessly. "Apparently Gabe took stuff before he left. Expensive stuff." The Conway sedan pulled up. Harold and Margaret got out with a contractor. They stood on the sidewalk, waiting patiently. Mia saw them and lost it. Started screaming about rights, injustice. Margaret said something I couldn't hear. Whatever it was made Mia go silent. Absolutely silent. She turned to Derek, grabbed his arm. Derek shook his head, backing away. Within an hour, the house was empty. Mia stood on the lawn one last time, shoulders shaking. Derek put a hand on her arm. She shrugged it off, got in her car, drove away without looking back. Derek stood there a moment longer. Then he turned and looked directly at my car. At me. Our eyes met. He didn't wave. Just looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Then he got in his car and followed his sister. Harold and Margaret walked up casually. A truck arrived with supplies. The renovation was beginning immediately. "That's it," Clara sounded disappointed. "Real revenge isn't dramatic," I said. "It's just this. Them leaving. Everything they built falling apart while life goes on." I drove home. Linda was waiting. Rachel called. "Mia's license is suspended for 3 years. Gabe has a federal warrant. Bank fraud, wire fraud, securities violations." We went upstairs. Linda had brought sandwiches. "Do you feel empty?" Linda asked. "Like in the movies?" I thought about it. No, I feel lighter, like I finally put down something heavy. My phone buzzed. "Derek, can we talk? Please?" I showed Linda. "What do you want to say?" I typed, "Not yet, maybe someday, but not yet." His response, "I understand. I'm sorry, Mum, for everything." Around 7, a delivery arrived. Inside the envelope was a check, $873,412.16. Rachel called. "You got it?" "I got it. Congratulations. It's yours. Completely, totally, legally yours. No one can take it." I sat with the check in my lap. More money than I'd ever had at once. Proof that I'd won, not just against Mia and Gabe, but the longer war of being taken seriously. My journal was on the coffee table. I picked it up and wrote, "They thought they could erase me. Turns out I was the one holding the eraser all along." The housewarming was 1 month after the eviction. The house was transformed. New landscaping, fresh paint, lights glowing in every window. Inside was dramatic. Modern kitchen, gleaming floors, soft grey-blue walls. Margaret showed us upstairs to the master bedroom. Warm cream with deep blue accents. On the dresser, a framed photograph of a woman in front of a house, holding keys. "My grandmother," Margaret said. "Her first house, 1952, a single woman with a teaching degree." She led me to the closet. On the inside of the door was a brass plaque. "In honor of Scarlett Wright, who built a home with love and defended it with courage. May these walls always shelter those who need them most." My throat closed up. "Thank you," I managed. "Thank you," Margaret said, "for showing me it was possible, to fight back, to win." Downstairs, Margaret clinked her glass. This house was owned by Scarlett Wright for over 30 years. She was forced out by family, who thought they could take what wasn't theirs. But Scarlett fought back, legally, brilliantly, and she won. Applause. Harold toasted. "To Scarlett Wright, may we all have her courage." On the porch later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "I know what you did. Margaret Conway told me everything. You destroyed my career on purpose. You win. Are you happy now?" "Mia." I typed back, "Yes." Deleted her number. Blocked it. Derek texted, Mia told me about the Conways. Did you know? Not until after the sale, but it doesn't change anything. You played us. I protected myself. There's a difference. I don't know if I can forgive this. You don't have to. I already forgave myself. That's enough. A federal judge wanted to hear my story. By evening's end, I had 4 speaking invitations for elder protection organizations. Linda drove me home. You did it. We did it. What happens now? Now I live, whatever I want. Inside my apartment, Patricia's message waited. You were right, about all of it. Thank you for showing me the truth. I typed back, thank you for seeing it. I turned off my phone, made tea, sat by the window. Tomorrow I'd call those organizations, share my story, turn my pain into prevention. But tonight, I sat with the silence, the peace, the satisfaction of finally learning to value myself enough to fight back, and slept better than I had in 3 years.